Let's turn to Republican Senator of Wisconsin, Ron Johnson, a member of the House of the Senate Homeland Security and Budget Committees. Senator, good to see you. What do you think about the decision not to send those bombs to Israel?
Well, I would consider it outrageous. To put this in context, why did Hamas feel emboldened to attack on October 7th? Why does Hezbollah feel emboldened to send missiles into Israel? Why do the Houthis feel emboldened to attack Western shipping in the Gulf? It's because the Obama administration and then now the Biden administration have coddled Iran. They have funneled tens, hundreds of billions of dollars into the economy, which means the military of Iran. And then the largest state sponsor of terror, Iran, turns around, provides that support for groups like the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas. And so the Biden administration has not only coddled Iran, the state sponsor of Hamas, but now by withholding weapons, it's showing to be itself to be the main protector of Hamas. I mean, this is beyond outrageous.
Yeah, the administration says, well, they're just the biggest, most destructive type of bomb because it could potentially cause such horrible civilian casualties. Do you buy that?
Well, we're also hearing it's guidance systems for more precision bombs. So who knows? I can't trust anything the Biden administration tells us. I would caution the American public to trust anything the Biden administration tells them either. So we just simply don't know. It's a really bad sign. It's not good diplomacy. It's not good to be shown to be coddling Iran. It's certainly not good to be shown to be the protector of Hamas. We ought to be supporting Israel rather than doing everything we can to prevent Israel from accomplishing what it has to accomplish. It has to destroy Hamas. In order to defend itself long term, this is an unsustainable state of affair for Israel to have a population governed by Hamas dedicated to wipe out. I mean, the only people talking about genocide is Hamas against Jews and against Israel. I completely understand why Israel thinks it has to destroy Hamas. America's role ought to be to support Israel in that quest. As horrible as war is, we didn't start this. It was Hamas that ended the ceasefire. It is Hamas that hides behind women and children, stores their munitions, digs their tunnels below hospitals. That's not Israel doing that. That is Hamas that is endangering Palestinian civilians.
Yeah, the former president yesterday in his rally in Wildwood, New Jersey, man, he really slammed the Biden administration and the president for withholding some of these arms. Let's listen to what the former president said.
I support Israel's right to win its war on terror. Is that okay? I don't know. I don't know if that's good or bad politically. I don't care. You got to do what's right. It was a terrible attack. October 7th was a terrible attack. I don't know. It's probably bad politically, but I don't care. You have to do the right thing.
Look, he's there talking about politically, he doesn't care. Do you think President Biden is being affected by the progressive wing of his party?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is all about Biden afraid to lose Michigan. And so he's pandering to the Palestinian supporters in Michigan, primarily. But again, there's no doubt about there's a pro-Hamas wing of the Democrat Party. Most Americans, I think, believe the former president. They want to support Israel in its right to defend itself against terrorism. Unfortunately, we have too many children of our children who've been indoctrinated by radical leftists in our university system. I think it's shocking to see these pro-Hamas demonstrations on the university, but it shouldn't surprise anybody. We have had professional agitators inside our universities for decades. They're called faculty and they're called the administrators. Not all, but many. And it's starting to manifest itself right now in these pro-Hamas demonstrations on campus.
And what do you think the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, should do in terms of going into Rafah? What's your sense? The administration apparently has said just do pinpoint type of attacks. Should there be something stronger? Should they be able to try and wipe out Hamas and go after Sinwar once and for all?
Well, everything I hear of Israeli public opinion, they support Prime Minister Netanyahu in destroying Hamas. They may not support him politically, but they understand that Israel has to destroy Hamas. We had a briefing with Prime Minister Netanyahu. He said Israel is doing everything they can to protect civilians. But again, it's difficult when Hamas hides behind women and children. So again, I think most Americans believe that Israel has that right. We need to stand behind Israel and its people. Eric, if a similar terrorist attack occurred on our soil, the same percentage of Americans that got slaughtered as the 1,200 Israelis, that'd be close to 50,000 Americans. You can imagine what the American public would be demanding of our government to take down that threat, to destroy that terrorist organization. That's all the Israelis are looking to do.
We had a terrorist attack December 7th, 1941. And here are the words of former President, or then President, Harry S. Truman to Japan. And he was very clear about about what happened with Japan, even though there were horrible civilian casualties. This is the former President Truman's words. Quote, "We are now prepared to obliterate more rapidly and completely every productive enterprise the Japanese have above ground in any city. We shall destroy their docks, their factories, and their communications. Let there be no mistake," said Harry Truman, "we shall completely destroy Japan's power to make war." Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that very same thing. He has said that Israel wants to completely destroy Hamas's power to wage war. How can he do that? Do you think he will be able to do that? Do you think Hamas can finally be defeated?
They have to be defeated. That's what war is about. I mean, I hate war, but again, it's not Israel that ended the ceasefire. They have been trying to peacefully coexist with a Palestinian state. They gave Gaza to the Palestinians. Palestinians, 70% of them voted for Hamas to be governed by Hamas, the terrorist organization that perpetrated the horrors on October 7th. So again, Israel has tried. I would say Israel has bent over backwards. But the only way you can have a two-state solution is both states have to recognize the other nation's right to exist. Hamas, the Palestinians obviously do not recognize Israel's right to exist. So at some point in time, you're going to have to defeat that ideology, that terrorist organization, and try and find Palestinians who are willing to accept Israel's right to exist and live with them peacefully. I wish that would happen sooner rather than later.
Hitler put a bullet in his head in the bunker in Berlin. That's now a parking lot of a normal house. One can only hope the same for Sinwar. Republican Senator Ron Johnson, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.